So this panel discussion is on changing dynamics in pharma, and we've got a lot of brain power up here, so it should be really interesting. I'm going to introduce Al Reska, who probably many of you know. He's from Lifescience Dynamics. He joined in 2019 as Chief Business Officer. He has over 22 years of experience in CI at Merck, most recently serving 12 years in their Global Competitive Intelligence Department. Al played a pivotal role in building and developing a world-class global competitive intelligence group with high impact on brand and corporate strategy. As an executive manager of large CI teams, Al has seen and been involved and led hundreds of secondary and primary CI research projects, competitive simulations, and strategic formulation projects. He was also co-chair for this conference, so many of you may remember him, and he passed the ball to me, yay. Look, there's 2 whole paragraphs about Al, but I only read 1. So I'm going to turn it over to Al. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Diana. Thanks everybody for joining us. Today I have a distinguished panel of panelists from major pharma, but also a member of the Lifescience Dynamics team. And rather than me introduce them, I'm just going to go down the line. We'll start with Maureen for what we're calling the 15-second bio.
Oh. That's fine. I can meet that. Test me. So I'm Maureen Nail. As you can see, I'm currently at AbbVie. I lead a CI and analytics team at AbbVie. Prior to that, I spent some time at Abbott, Pfizer, and I was a former consultant. So I was in dialysis. I think that's 15 seconds. Sure. I'll leave it at that.
Chris?
Yeah, and good morning, everyone. I'm Chris Stellato. I'm head of the Competitive Intelligence Center of Excellence at Pfizer. I've been with Pfizer for the majority of my career, starting as a bench scientist and then as a lab head before transitioning into strategy and competitive intelligence about 8 or so years ago. I will beat you in the 15 seconds. There you go. I'll give you my extra 5 seconds.
Yes.
Peter.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to harass Al because he gives a long introduction and tells us we only have 15 seconds. Hi, everyone. My name is Peter Kelly. I'm a principal at Lifescience Dynamics. Very briefly, I spent 15 or so years as a bench scientist. I've been with Lifescience Dynamics for the last 5 years or so doing competitive intelligence. And maybe for today's interest, I spent a odd part of my career, 7 or 8 years at the Bank of England doing financial services regulation, so similar to a role at the Fed. So maybe I could bring that perspective today, as well as kind of the vendor side of our CI specialist insights. Thank you.
All right. Thanks very much, Peter. So in brief, we're going to talk about 2 general areas. And the first is AI in pharma and in CI, pharma CI specifically. And we'll get on to that in a moment. The other one is regarding evolving market dynamics. And there will be a tie-in to Matt Majewski's talk that he gave this morning. There won't really be that much redundancy with what he spoke, but there will be a discussion around the consequences of the IRA on pharmaceutical strategies. So the first thing that we wanted to ask of you in the audience is how your view of AI use in pharma will evolve during this conference. So it's not for you to answer right now, but for you to think about AI. And it would help actually if you don't have an opinion on AI, if you formed an opinion on AI maybe during the conference. And actually, as a way to tee this up before we get into the topic, how many have thought about AI, read up on AI, or used AI? Just show of hands. So that's most of you. And among you, how many have used AI either personally or on the job? That's a lot of people. That's good. And just so I'm clear, how many just on the job and didn't just use ChatGPT to write a resume or something? So it's quite a few, but you know, way more than we probably would have had 5 years ago to raise their hands.
Or last year.
Last year.
But still quite a divide between the number that are using it in their personal lives and those that are using it in their professional lives.
Right. One of the things I think that Diana touched on when she did her morning introduction is the idea that AI could potentially replace a competitive intelligence professional. And I think that, and she referenced, and you will see a lot of talks here at the conference on generative AI or GAI. And I think that the thing the missing thing that is more aspirational, unfortunately has gen in the name of it. It's artificial general intelligence, or AGI. And I thought I'd just throw it out to the panelists here to talk a little bit about generative AI and artificial general intelligence, and sort of what are the barriers to actually having the AI industry take away your jobs. So I'll just throw it out to anybody who'd like to start the conversation.
Well, I think if we just base it so everyone generative AI is here, right? It's what we're dealing with now. And I think there's a lot of discussion around it because we're all trying to figure out how to actually implement it. But it's actually already available. I had not heard about the other one until Al mentioned it to me. And that's maybe, we could talk about it a little bit more, but that's one that has potential maybe to replace a little bit more of some of what we do, but it's more future, a lot more future focused. I think, I don't know about you all, I know we're supposed to be future focused and future forward, but we work in pharma, we work in year cycles, right? So we have a tendency to think a little more narrow. Yeah. So my mind is more in generative AI right now and trying to how to implement it. This other stuff, I'm like, I can't even wrap my head around it just yet. Maybe I should, but.
Yeah, and Maureen, like you, generative AI is here, it's now. I think we're all trying to figure out how to best implement it as a tool to supplement the work that we're doing or to enhance the work that we're doing. General AI or general intelligence, yeah. I think it's a little bit further down the road. It's right now, it's like theoretical. Yeah. And it's going to impact way more than just a competitive intelligence analyst. I mean, I think at all levels of an organization, all levels of society, I think there are going to be things to watch out for and learn from.
I hope I am retired by then.
Me too, actually.
That's my goal, is to retire before it impacts and I don't have to worry about it.
Well, you don't know. I mean, look how quickly generative AI has sort of sprung itself on us.
It might be an unfounded dream, but that's...
But even as we talk about generative AI being here, I think there are still use cases being proven. We have an idea of using it for new molecule design, not yet seeing the output of that. So the idea is there and we're implementing it, but maybe it's not going to spread further in pharma until we start seeing actually we invested this and this is what the outcome was, and not just another kind of high throughput screen technology that we invest in and we don't necessarily see the return on investment.
So generative in sort of in its use in the term of GAI is that the artificial intelligence can generate something for you. It could be text. It could be your cover letter that you want to send to a company.
Are you applying for a job?
It could be a graphical image. It could be that it ages you. Take a photo and the generative AI looks at you and reads the tea leaves and shows you what you look like in 15 or 30 years. For artificial general intelligence, my first exposure to it was when I was much younger and I saw 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I hope many of you have seen because it is kind of a cult classic. And HAL, the computer HAL, was what basically artificial general intelligence is that HAL was sort of like a human being who was embodied within the computer and could make decisions that the astronauts could not override in the movie. And I think when I think of the potential consequences of artificial general intelligence, anybody watch the Black Mirror series on Netflix? They have all these, my daughter says, Black Mirror is the series that says technology bad. And I do in many ways think of AGI as technology bad in many ways. But I think, there is generative AI in pharma today. Yeah. And I saw the other day that Google has something called Lifescience. And it's like ChatGPT in that it reads things, but what it's reading is genomes, and it's looking at missense mutations that could cause potential misfolding of proteins. Could be a good way to screen people for rare diseases, for instance. But I wonder what you think on the larger sense, before we get to CI, about the role of AI today or moving forward. What are your thoughts on generative AI in the pharma industry writ large?
Yeah, so I think we've seen a number of use cases across all parts of pharma. The very early use cases that we were seeing was around medicinal design and SAR and being able to identify the right molecules for the right targets. I've seen that grow up a little bit more. I think a lot of the press that we see around it still is focused on the discovery, the application in the discovery phase of our business. But now I think we're seeing more and more opportunities, especially with Gen AI, to apply the technology across, whether it's in manufacturing, whether it's in the things that we do in competitive intelligence, whether it's in, let's say, even regulatory, or helping with filings and things like that. So I'm seeing more and more opportunities to leverage the tool across all parts of our businesses.
Anytime you have data, right, where you can either gather all of it in one place, try to make sense of it, that's where generative AI can play a role.
Sure.
I'm still I question, or I'm still skeptical, or yet to see the evidence of, individual use cases on kind of drug design or drug efficiency or trial design, or maybe, looking at retinal scans or pathology to identify artifacts that a human eye can't do. But that's training on data sets with ideas that we have. Now, when you talk about pharma using AI to help, cross-functional efficiency or data sharing, that would be a huge advancement. But it's the newest tool we have of trying to break down those barriers with large companies. And so it would be great if it works, but I'm on a wait and see approach. Like, let's see how it can operationalize things and break down silos that always develop and always need to be broken down. So, but that would be an exciting area, not as sexy as a new molecule, but would definitely help the efficiency of pharma.
Agreed, and I think one of the things we have to remember is these models all need data.
Yeah.
And data is going to be the restricting factor, and those that have the data or control the data are going to be the ones that are going to benefit from the outcomes.
So let's drill down into CI. Anybody here use ChatGPT to read a press release and write a report for you? Not a report, but maybe an alert that you sent out to people? There's one guy willing to admit it. I bet there's more of you who have done it.
At Abbey, we're not allowed to use ChatGPT, so I will not confirm or deny.
That's a good. Let's go back out to the audience with that. How many people's companies have a policy that says you can't use ChatGPT or any other open source AI?
Yeah, an external generative AI.
So there's a lot more people. There's not a huge number, but there are more people who have the policy against it than are willing to actually admit that they're using it. In this audience, this very honest audience. What do you think about trust and insights, right? So what's it going to take for you to leverage AI in the CI spectrum and have trust?
Well, so I think leveraging it is one thing. Having 100% trust in the output is something completely separate. I see it as a drafting tool, but that is going to need human intelligence layered on top of it in order to not only make sure that everything is correct that's there, but that you're capturing the nuances of different events, but also that you're generating those insights. Because insights aren't just generated from a summary of articles or information, but they're based upon a long-term knowledge of a particular space.
Before that, though, there's and related to that is the understanding of it. Right? So I think there's probably a spectrum of us that some maybe have tried it but don't necessarily maybe fully understand it. We're still trying to learn. Maybe that's me. And then others are a little more advanced and get it, and then they're more in the, okay, I'm not going to trust everything. I know how it works, and I'm going to have to trust and verify. You need, the transparency is, of course, really important, or where the sources are, but then building on your own knowledge on that based on your own historical knowledge of that space. It's similar in my mind to how working in a pharmaceutical company, how I engage with my external partners. They provide outputs to me. I look at them and I say, well, you're missing this, or did you think about this, or or add my own AbbVie context to it. So it'd be very similar to that.
Peter, how about for I mean, you can speak about Lifescience dynamics, but you could also speak in a coded fashion about what you're seeing across the industry, because we have to maintain our confidentiality.
I think you saw what's going on across firms in not a coded fashion in terms of who's allowed to use it and who's not. I think we have the same perspective in terms of 100% trust in the model of what it's generating for us. That
Yeah.
yes, it can help us there as an efficiency tool and make us more effective, but there needs to be a person at the end kind of making sure that the insight that it's generating is not just factual, but relevant and relates to kind of the touch points or the key things that the client's worried about. So that has that lens, and it would probably take twice as long to train the AI to understand that as it would to kind of just do it yourself. But maybe that's still being kind of defensive and skeptical of something that does have the ability to kind of enhance us even more, and we still think that we need to be in control.
So,
And I think the relevance piece is one that I think quite a bit about.
Yeah.
Al, you brought up the example of using generative AI to summarize a press release.
Right.
And we all know that in a press release that is going to deliver negative news, that
Sure.
gets buried. And
Oh,
I think
yeah.
as individuals start to realize the power of generative AI, they're going to start writing those press releases so that news gets buried even further behind some of the positive optimism that that writers may put into those press releases.
Sort of sentiment.
So final question on AI. It's the year 2040. Artificial general intelligence exists, and they can replace human beings. And your company is considering replacing the entire CI team with artificial general intelligence. What is the company going to have to be able to reveal to the platform internally
Everything.
that is going to allow them to say, yeah, it's going to do a great job? And what restrictions are going to have to be in place so that it doesn't bleed out and release things that get shared across?
Al, why do you
competitors?
think they're going to start with the CI team?
Because that's the relevance here, but it's probably going to replace everybody, right? Yeah. So
We have some influence, right? There's a lot of politics that go on.
Maybe we
Seniors,
replace
the
the C-suite first.
well, so that's a good point. So when artificial general intelligence comes, by the way, it's 2040. That's the year it's going to be here, because I said so. It's probably going to wallop society, and the last thing we're going to be worried about is our CI jobs. It's probably going to replace a lot of things, and there probably were going to be a lot of people who are out of jobs. When I was a little kid, technology was going to be flying cars, and it was going to make people lazy. They were going to live a life of leisure, and companies were going to be welfare companies, and they were going to pay people to do nothing. They were just going to monitor the machines during everything. That was my childhood view of the future. So you can tell my 2040 prediction is really accurate based on my childhood experiences coming to today. But do you think it could take over information, insights?
I don't think so. Not unless you hook my brain up to a computer and you suck it all out, and the rest of the company, you suck everything out. There's always going to be some aspect that isn't written down somewhere, where a system can pull information. I think you're still going to have information that's not actually available for those systems to grab.
Or even human judgment.
Yeah.
Like the educated guess of my expert judgment that I can't quantify that. I need to say, based upon my 20 years of experience of these 5 molecules, this is what's worked.
Yeah. There's so much nuance and cultural differences or all sorts of different things. Like you were talking about, like almost like not misinformation, but burying things and not making it so clear that I think there will always have to be, regardless of the system. And maybe I'm just too optimistic, but regardless of the system, I think there always has to be some human component. Maybe there's less of us.
We're going to move along quickly.
Yeah.
I had one more point to put on AI. Al, sorry.
But we are going to move on quickly. So make your point
I'll make it quick.
in
15
4 seconds.
Oh,
No, I won't. I mean, we talk about general intelligence, generative AI. There's still a huge benefit for us in kind of lower tech AI of going through our data systems to understand things that we're missing. And then the one we didn't talk about yet was using AI to go through EHRs to identify patients where they aren't on standard of care or there's a huge misdiagnosis. Lots of data protection issues, but a huge benefit for patients, for healthcare systems, and for manufacturers to make sure that everyone that should be on this care is on that care.
Right.
yeah.
So
That was more than 20.
Let's change gears quickly. So there always have been market drivers that would change strategies, evolve strategies, shape. And I guess the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, is one of the more recent ones that would do it. What do you see the impact? If we just start with the IRA, what is the impact on it? And do you think it's going to be the Fierce Biotech article that Matt Majewski showed, where there are going to be, whatever it was, 79 different small molecules not going out onto the market? What do you think? What do you think it does to corporate strategy? And don't limit yourself to that article. What do you think is going to happen?
I think what we saw in Matt's early slide around, governments come up with ways to, let's say, I'm trying to choose my words carefully, to
At the end of the day, increase
influence
access.
pricing.
Increase
right?
access.
So they look to increase access and influence pricing about once a decade. The industry has adapted to that at each turn. And I think the industry will adapt to this as well. We're an industry of very smart individuals. I think we're all driven by delivering medicines to the market and to patients. And I don't think that the IRA is going to slow us down.
Right.
I agree with that. I think these types of things, like it forces companies to maybe shift a little bit of how they're doing things in order to still achieve objectives. So it'll be interesting. I'm really excited to see where we're at when we start to see like things actually play out and how companies adjust to it.
Right. There were already pressures, I think, that over the last, let's say, 2 decades have made a great favorable environment for biologics. This is just the latest, but there have been prior drivers. If you think just about patents, right, expiry, is it a patent cliff or is it sort of a shallow ski slope? And I think biologics fit into the latter. So you've got Humira, which has biosimilar intensity pouring in. I was interested to see that Enbrel was on that list. Enbrel has the most unbelievably long patent life of any biologic that I know. So I wasn't surprised to see it there. So what do you think about sort of biologics as it relates to the IRA? And then also, what do you think happens to mergers and acquisitions and things like that? So that if you roll forward, what's gonna happen in your mind?
So I think the biologics maybe is a relatively simple answer. Like you said, there's already been sort of favorability towards biologics. So this is just one more favorability towards biologics. So companies that are already in that space are going to continue to develop those and look for those types of assets.
Yeah.
So I don't think that necessarily changes too much. Maybe just raises the benefits there.
Yeah.
What was the second question? M&A?
Yeah, because
thinking about the answer to the
because it relates. So when I came into pharma, it was organic. Organic was it was not licensed. It wasn't acquired.
Yeah.
And medicinal chemists ruled supreme in. I'm dating myself. They ruled supreme in the industry, and the industry called itself pharma, and it really meant small molecules and vaccines. And so, over the course of my tenure in biopharma, M&A has risen to greater and greater levels of prominence. But the IRA should have an influence on the decisions that companies make moving forward, their M&A decisions, their commitment to vaccines. I know Pfizer's big in vaccines. So what do you see the pressures moving us forward in terms of strategy, with M&A being a very, very prominent part of strategy?
I think that when it comes to M&A, I think there's just a slightly different look in terms of that calculation of the ROI.
Yeah.
So when you start to, if the IRA plays out, you might take a different approach to your indication prioritization, or you might have to do things faster.
Yeah.
Maybe not go into that small indication first and then work your way up, or start in like fourth line and work your way up to first. You might aim for second first as your launch. And so that might just change what the ROI looks like, but that'll change it across the board. So everybody's valuation might change. So maybe you just change internally what your thresholds are.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's, this is something that impacts all of us. So I don't necessarily know if it's going to have that big of an impact for any individual company. One of the things that I was thinking about this morning, and I don't know the answer to, but as this plays out, you look at what drugs are on that list. And if there's certain categories like different indications or TAs that start to get hit a little bit more than others, maybe that changes where you think about doing. Like maybe you don't go and acquire a cardiovascular company because that companies, has a number of these products that are now negotiated by Medicare.
Chris, what do you think of that? Because Pfizer was huge in cardiovascular.
Cardiovascular.
And maybe they are. But you've seen that evolution, small molecule to macromolecule.
I think what we saw
changed our
on the
logo.
list, yes, we changed our logo many times. But what we saw on that list were medicines that have a large impact on patients, with the number of patients that they're able to treat. And those are the cardiovascular and metabolic diseases. I don't think that there's going to be reduced demand. There's still a lot of opportunity for innovation in those diseases. Right. And I don't think, if large pharma is not filling that vacuum, smaller pharma or biotech is going to fill that vacuum. And we know that there's an exclusion in the IRA for smaller companies. So maybe that's where that innovation comes from. But I think, Al, you started your question asking around particular modalities and whether the IRA is going to shift focus on modalities, let's say from smaller molecules to biologics. I think that there was a lot of noise around that very early on in the IRA. Right. And certainly amongst senior leaders across the industry, we're talking about a shift away from small molecules. I think they quickly changed gears, or they became quiet, and tying back to M&A. I know some of those leaders that I heard make very early statements about it shifting what their portfolios were going to look like, went and did deals for small molecules in the months that followed. So I'm not convinced that the IRA is going to shift which modalities large pharma works in.
Peter, you have a much broader view because you work with so many companies.
As my kind of amateur economist, former central banker, I see, IRA, it just impacts the market, and the market adapts. Financial markets adapt, new regulations or new ideas, as much as do pharma markets. In the last 10 years, I think the stat I saw, between half and 2/3 of new novel drugs coming to market from big pharma may have started as a partnership with small pharma. So there's always that model there. From my perspective on the vendor side, what we see that's interesting is that there are small companies out there that are interested in picking up assets that might be deprioritized from big pharma because the risk reward for them doesn't meet some sort of hurdle or core, but there's still a viable product and a patient benefit out there. Separately, we see more established players that are interested in getting into biosimilars as maybe a portfolio play to add to the quiver of arrows they have. So the metrics change, the valuations change, but the risk reward is there depending on the perspective you're coming from.
Right. That's good. I think what I do, we could go on about the IRA, and I wish there were more talks about the IRA here, but this is Artificial Intelligence Week at Pharma CI. So what I think I'll do is thank the panel very much. You did an excellent job. Thank you so much. And if I haven't offended Diana's sense of time too much, maybe we could have a couple questions before she kicks us off the stage.
We only have time for like a really easy question, though, I think.
Yeah. Indra?
Morning, and about your talk on the IRA. So, and I keep going back to this. It's the Medicare population that the government is negotiating prices because that's where they put a big amount of spend.
Sure.
So, in a way, I see one of the possibilities is that there's less initiative for pharma to treat. I think you guys might have touched on it, maybe cardiovascular, but to treat the aging. Maybe we go more towards, diseases like muscular dystrophy or diseases that are really affecting the younger population where Medicare isn't. I don't know those, but I do believe there will be a balance in the end. So I agree. I think maybe I didn't express that this morning, but that's what I see. Companies will figure out how to basically, move around this so that their profitability stays the same. Otherwise, we are going to mess up innovation in the future.
There was a longevity study published in The Lancet in 2018, and it talked about the differences between 2016 and 2040.
Yeah.
The conclusions I drew from that is that by not having people die from infectious diseases, lower respiratory being the one exception that wouldn't really change, but most infectious disease as a cause of death would go down because of anti-infectives in vaccines. but that it created a market of elderly people that could live longer and die from something else. So it kind of goes against what you're saying.
Well, I see metabolic diseases up there, cardiovascular disease. Those are all affecting elderly people that age.
Sure.
And I don't know where something like, Alzheimer's would fit in. But the other thing I was going to ask is because they said it wouldn't affect small biotechs because obviously it's a single drug. And I see models like Roivant where you have all these little tiny companies. And part of me wonders whether that will become a model in the future to protect these drugs. And I don't know, I'm just like thinking out of the box here, like because of what they, you spin out your drug, whatever it is.
There could, what do you guys think? There could be an M&A consequence where small molecules, small companies stay small.
Yeah, Peter, when you're talking about like the partnerships and Big Pharma partnering with Pfizer partners with Roivant, that's what I was thinking that too, that maybe that will be something that we see, that companies will stay small and not like get sucked up by Big Pharma, maybe.
Or there'll be innovative ways to write those partnering contracts.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I think. And the last thing I was going to touch on, just because I'm curious about your opinion. So obviously NBEs are more protected than NCEs here in this model. And some of the incentives for NBE and that were given in the past, let's say, had to do with, I guess, recouping costs of development because it was more expensive to develop an NBE, and they were like incentives. What's the incentive here? Why? Because I don't think that's true anymore. It doesn't take longer to develop these drugs. I'm not sure if the cost plays out anymore. So I would say, what is the incentive here for the government to give preference to NBEs? I just thought maybe somebody would have an idea about why that is.
I hadn't thought about it.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I could speculate.
That's the
but
hard question.
probably not going to do it up here.
I think we'll take that one offline.
Yeah.
Thank you once again. Thank you very much. We're all around for the rest of the conference. If you have any interest in further dialogue with us, we'd welcome it.